Welcome to Lead with Less. I'm Tash Peterson, your host, Certified People Leadership Coach. And today I am talking all about some controversial opinions I have about leadership. This is an episode that's probably been a long time coming, and I've been sharing some controversial opinions and spicy takes on my social media, but I thought, you know what? Why not just do an episode on this just to, get them out there, really just share them. And I'm going to share 5 that I've come to really talk quite strongly about, something that I share a lot about in my coaching programs with my coaching clients, so that leaders can really set themselves up to be the best that they can be, but also to create spaces where people really thrive underneath their leadership. So controversial opinions are really important. They're important for us to create healthy debate, constructive conversations where we're really challenging the quote unquote normalized beliefs that we might have or fall into, or some of that group thinking mentality that can be really detrimental to the way that we set our teams up, the way that we set ourselves up for success. And it's really important as a people leader to embrace controversial opinions, to embrace opinions that are different to yours, or that really pause you to think, to question, interesting. I really want to know more about that. Like, how does that make me feel about what I believe, what I think? And this is really important and this is really healthy. This is something that I'm actually becoming a little bit concerned with in the age of social media. There's a lot of canceling that's happening. There's a lot of absolute outrage that people have different thoughts, opinions, ideas to what would be the norm. But I think it's really important. I think it's healthy, especially if we do it in really respectful ways. Now, I'm not talking about just creating chaos in conversations and it just gets plastered out there and there's no, there's no mediation in terms of making sure everyone gets heard, everyone gets to speak, everyone gets to share, and that there's this healthy questioning that's happening. As a leader, that's definitely your role, is to make sure that there are spaces for this healthy, controversial conversations to happen, but that we're not canceling and having really disrespectful conversations. Absolutely. Now, I don't mean let's start talking about politics at work, let's start talking about health beliefs. Like, I'm not meaning those things. I'm talking about controversial opinions that sit within the scope of what we do and the work that we do so that we can create better outcomes. We don't need to be going and talking about all sorts of personal stuff. We can keep this in the workplace sphere. This also translates into everyday life as well, around, are we creating spaces within our friends, our family, our community groups where we can have really healthy discourse, where we can have really healthy controversial opinions, where we can talk about it. And I've spoken about this in quite a few episodes in the past around this definition that I really love from Oscar Trimboli around deeply listening. And it's the willingness to have our mind changed. And when we have the willingness to have our mind changed, we are more likely to participate in really healthy, controversial, and open conversations. So I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to dive into the 5 controversial opinions I have about leadership. And I'm really going to be vulnerable here because I'm a little bit nervous and a little bit scared, but hey, it's what it's all about, right? Being a leader is about being willing to step out and share the things that really scare us. And I'm always here for that. The first controversial opinion I have is that leadership isn't that hard. Like, it really isn't. It's actually very simple. Listen more. There's so much talk. Leadership is challenging. It is, because we're dealing with people and we're dealing with people who are different, and no one person is the same. And you're constantly trying to navigate different scenarios, situations, personalities, all of those things, beliefs, values. But ultimately, what makes it simpler is if we listen more. If we listen to what people are saying, what people are telling us, if we are listening to have our mind change, for our assumptions to be challenged, for our beliefs to be questioned, it can make our jobs infinitely simpler. Because what I see happen a lot is the constant assuming, the constant assumption, prediction. Oh, it must be because of this. It must be because they're this. It must be because of this. It must be because they did this thing last time. You don't know that. You don't know that. And that's what makes leadership hard, because of the constant predicting, assuming, trying to figure it out, rather than asking the question and then genuinely listening to the answer. Leadership can become so much simpler if we listen more. And I did some research on Kim Scott's website. She developed the Radical Candor model, which I love and I use in all of my feedback training. And I really love what she says about difficult conversations. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We need to be listening twice as much as we're speaking. And I just love that. And it's something that I'm really trying to practice myself. Doesn't always work. Controversial opinion number 2, fixing isn't your job. Your job as a leader is not to fix. Your job is to coach and to create an environment where your people can learn and grow. that is your job. Now, sometimes you might genuinely need to fix something because you are literally the only person that can do that. But what I see happen too much is managers and leaders step into this role of fixing and rescuing because it's quote unquote easier, or because we don't want to delegate, we don't want to transfer the ownership to that person because maybe we don't trust them or maybe they won't do as good of a job. But that isn't our job. Our job is to be able to delegate with intention and purpose, be able to set clear expectations, and to be able to coach our people through problem solving themselves, to be able to maintain ownership and accountability of the thing that they're doing so that they can build that skill set and that confidence to be able to move forward with that thing. That is our job. Our job is not to fix. And the more that we play that role of fixing and solving, the more overdependence we can create as leaders because we are constantly trying to play that role. But two, we can create overwhelm because we are putting things onto our plate that's not meant to be there. And that can create some serious overwhelm and overdependence. So fixing isn't our job. The next opinion is being kind will get you further than being nice. And I did a video on this and it took off, and a lot of people really agreed with this. Nice is wanting to please, wanting to satisfy, wanting to appease. It's very much coming from a place of not wanting to rock the boat. We really just want to keep things easy breezy, which means that we're not actually dealing with the things that need to be dealt with. We're not having the tricky conversations. Being kind is about having firm boundaries, holding firm expectations, and communicating those. And Kim Scott talks about this. Being kind is about challenging directly and caring personally. You can care about people and also challenge them directly. Hey, I need to talk to you about what happened here. This is not okay. What's going on? How do we move forward from here? Hey, I need to give you this really challenging feedback because we need to see a change here. Let's talk about what's going on so that we can find a way forward. We need to be willing to hold firm boundaries, have uncomfortable conversation, confront difficult topics in order to progress, in order to create success, in order to create the results that we really want to have from our people. And being kind is the way that we need to do that. Niceness is not what we are playing in the workplace. It's not what we're playing in when we're being leaders, because when we're being nice, we are withholding necessary conversations. We're withholding the things that are really important and are going to create the biggest impact. We need to be focusing on being kind, not being nice. Controversial opinion number 4. Checking in constantly undermines trust. And this is probably not really a controversial opinion. This is something that gets talked about actually quite a lot. When you are not in the office, when you are on holiday, when you are away sick, constantly checking in to see what your people are doing and how they're getting on actually undermines your trust and their ability to do their jobs. They are more likely to disengage, to become frustrated, to become resentful, because they're not being trusted to do what they're employed to do. And that's on you. If you do not trust your team, it's your job to build that trust. Your team do not owe you trust from the get-go. That's something that we need to give and trust that we're going to receive that in return. The irony there, isn't it? You need to ensure that your team are the best people for the work that they do, that they're set up with the best support, that they are set up with the expectations, the training, all of the things that they need in order to do a great job. And then you need to let them do their job. Now, when I talk about checking in constantly, I'm talking about those micromanaging tendencies of wanting constant updates, wanting to know where things are at, that are outside the norm of what is reasonable for you to really know. This isn't about not having your formal one-on-ones with your team, because that is going to be the best thing to build the right relationships. You need to have those formal one-on-ones with them. This is about the constant checking in because you were concerned that things are not getting done. But if you're concerned that things are not getting done, it means that expectations are not clear enough. It means that you are not comfortable with the way that your team is set up, and that's on you to figure out how to adjust. That's on you to figure out whether that's a you mindset problem or whether that's a genuine change that needs to happen in the way that the team is set up, that the way that the team is supported, and that the way that the team is structured to work. Be really mindful that when you check in with your team, that it is valid. What is the purpose of you checking in? What is it that you really want from them from this check-in? And is it necessary? Or are you just trying to curb your own anxiety? That's something that you need to work on. And this is where it's really important for leaders to have their own coaches or their own supervisors so that they can really get challenged on this. And this is something that I work on with a lot of my clients, because often a lot of that nervousness and anxiety and mistrust isn't because they actually genuinely mistrust their team. It's because of their past experiences that they've carried with them. And it's impacting the way that they're now showing up for their team, which isn't okay. Unless there is a valid reason, because someone might be on a performance improvement plan, because there are specific reasons why you're checking in, because that's been agreed, let your team do their jobs. Trust them that they know what they're doing because you hired them to do that. And if you've inherited a team where maybe you don't know, this is where really good one-on-ones are required, because it means that you get to know your people, and it means that you get to know how they work, what their strengths are, what their gaps are, and how you can best support them to do the work that they need to do. So be mindful of how much you're checking in and whether it's actually necessary. And the last one, it's not your job to assume. It's your job to create space where people can tell you the truth. I did a social post recently of 3 signs that your team really trusts you. And actually, I probably could do a podcast episode on that. But 2 of the points that I made in that video is your team really trusts you when you know what people are struggling with, because they feel safe to share it. When you know what people are struggling with, whether that's day to day, whether that's personally, don't take this as a measure that your team needs to be telling you every single thing that's happening in their personal life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they feel safe enough that they can come to me like, hey, I'm having a really hard time at home at the moment, so I might be a little bit off. I'm getting support. I'll let you know if I need anything else. If your team feels safe enough to do that, they super trust you. Like, you're in a great trusting position with your team. And the other one that I talked about in there was, actually, I'm going to share all 3 because I think they're all really valid. The other one is what's frustrating and blocking your team every single day, because they are willing to come and tell you, hey, I'm really struggling to work with this person. This is what's happening. This is what I've tried to do about it. I need your help. Or, hey, there's a lot of blocks coming from this other team. This is what we've tried to do to navigate it. We really need you to step in. If they can openly share what's frustrating them, what's blocking them day to day, it means that they trust you, that they know that you will have their back. It means that they know that you will do what you can to be able to help them move forward. And then the third thing is, you aren't surprised if someone resigns. If you are surprised that someone wants to leave your team, that someone wants to go somewhere else, it means that there isn't actually a high level of trust there, because they don't trust you enough that they can really share what's going on for them and why they might be looking at moving on. One of the questions I put in my one-on-one catch-up template, which I'll link in the show notes, is, if you were to resign tomorrow, what would be the reason? Because it gives an opportunity for people to share what might be simmering under the surface. And it gives them an opportunity to share it early so that you have the chance to mitigate it early. Right? And that's what we really want to work towards. It's not your job to assume. It's your job to create a space where people are willing to be honest and truthful with you. Because again, as I talked about earlier, assuming regularly creates worse outcomes, because we're making assumptions based on our stories, based on our facts, based on our information. And we don't have all of the information. We don't know what is going through someone else's mind. As much as we can assume, we are not mind readers and we don't know 100% of the information and the facts. But if we create spaces where people genuinely can share what's going on, they can genuinely talk about what's happening, it means that you can create the best possible solutions. You can create the best possible outcomes. So stop assuming and start asking questions. This kind of links back to the first one, right? Leadership would be so much easier and simpler if you just asked more questions and listened more. And hey, these are all things that I need to hear, all things that I need to be reminded of, because this also shows up in the way that we show up in our personal relationships as well. Anything with another person, all of these things can be really applicable and be really connected to. So those are the 5 controversial things that I think about leadership. And I'd really love to hear what you think, but I will share them with you again. Leadership isn't that hard. The more that you listen, the easier it actually is. Fixing isn't your job. Coaching and creating an environment where they can learn and grow is. 3, being kind will get you further than being nice. So focus on being kind, holding firm boundaries, and challenging directly while also caring personally for your people. Checking in constantly undermines trust. Make sure that your team is set up with the right expectations, the right support, the right structure in order to best support them. And if you are struggling to trust, to not check in, do the inner work and the mindset work that you need to, so that you can stop doing that. Make sure you check in with yourself on why you need to check in constantly. And number 5, it's not your job to assume. It's your job to create a space where people can be honest about what's going on so that you can really support them in the best way possible. So there we go. It's a very short, sharp episode, but I think it's a really key one. I really want you to think about, what are some of the things that's coming up for you? What are some of the things that you believe about leadership, whether it's standard, whether it's controversial, whether it's different from the norm, whether it's the same as the norm? What are those aspects? And share them with me. I'd really love to know because I think that this is a conversation that can be really expanded. And I think that we can really create some really robust, constructive conversations, which will have an immense impact on the leadership experience. There we go. As always, check the show notes for all of the links for the things that I've mentioned. If you would like to work with me, I do have spaces open for coaching. I have one-off strategy sessions, which is called the round table. So you can have a look at that. You complete an audit, you do a one-on-one session with me, and then you get 2 weeks of support to help you move through your action plan. Or you can look at one-on-one leadership coaching, which is a 3-month, 6-session journey with me to work on a number of different things to move you from where you are to where you want to go. And we will link all of that in the show notes so you can check it all out there. But otherwise, have a great week, and I will be back in your ears again with the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead with Less, the podcast for people leaders. I hope what you've heard today has helped you on your people leadership journey. Remember, it's all a practice and you get better each day. If you enjoyed this episode and the show, please subscribe and take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, or you can leave a review on Spotify's Q&A polls under each episode. And if you know anyone who could benefit from listening to the show, then please do share this with them and help me reach as many people leaders as possible.